Today's video is sort of a 2-for-1. I am going to show you some easy and delicious dinners that I'm making for my family, but we're also gonna prep some dinners for the freezer. If you've heard of cook once, eat twice, that strategy for meal prepping where you either double recipes or you meal prep lots of ingredients at a single time, this is sort of a take on that idea. I'm going to prepare one meal for the crock pot for my family to eat now, and at the same time, prep that same crock pot recipe I can store in the freezer so that I will have it for next week or next month or even next year, since we're just a few months away from 2025. Tonight I am making a ground beef and wild rice casserole in the crock pot, and I'm gonna prep one for the freezer too. And I don't attempt a lot of rice dishes in the slow cooker, but I've made this one before and it has worked beautifully every time. It's delicious and it's just a little bit outside the regular like soups and stews and the regular pasta dishes and things like that that we're often creating in the slow cooker. So it's a nice departure from like a typical crock pot recipe, but instead of having to bake everything up in the oven like you would for a typical rice casserole, you get the ease of making it in the slow cooker. To make one of these recipes, so if you're just making a single, you will need a pound of ground beef. I'm using 90-10, 2 stalks of celery and half an onion. I'm gonna chop those up here in just a minute. 2 boxes of rice-a-roni long grain and wild rice, 1 can of cream of mushroom soup, 1 can of beef consomme plus 1 can of water, 2 tablespoons of butter, 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. And if you're going to make an additional one for the freezer, you'll need double of these ingredients. So I have 2 pounds of ground beef, a little bit more than 2 pounds of ground beef in my slow cooker now on the saute function. I'm going to just brown all of that up. And when it's done browning, I'm going to set aside half of it and let it cool down, and we'll use it in our freezer meal prep later. And now I am going to chop up my onion and celery. I need half an onion and 2 stalks of celery for a single recipe. So I'm just gonna chop up a whole onion, 4 stalks of celery, and then I'll use half in the one I'm making tonight and half in my freezer meal prep later. I'm also gonna open up these cans and pour them into another container along with 1 can's worth of water and mix it all up so that everything's mixed really well before I add it to the slow cooker. Now that my beef is done cooking and I've removed half of it and set it aside, I added my chopped celery and onions, 2 tablespoons of butter, 2 tablespoons of soy sauce, both boxes of rice, plus both packets of the seasoning mix. And then these are my liquids, my 2 cans of soup plus 1 can of water. I'm gonna give this all a stir. I'm gonna pop the lid on and let it cook on low for 3 to 4 hours. You guys, it is a sad day, and if you're wondering if there's something off about my filming, there is a little bit. It's because I am filming on my little V10 camera. It's like a little handheld camera, not a phone. It's because my Canon G7X that I've been using for like 3 years now, it has stopped working. It has been dropped for the 2nd time and I could not make it work today. So thank you for bearing with me if this video seems filmed a little bit differently than normal for me. To prep this one for the freezer, I took a gallon Ziploc. I put inside of that the ground beef, cooked, my chopped onions and celery, the 2 tablespoons of butter, 2 tablespoons of soy sauce, and the 2 cans of soup, 1 can of cream of mushroom, 1 can of beef consomme mixed up. I did not include the water this time. I took that bag and actually put it inside of another freezer Ziploc bag along with the 2 boxes of rice and pop that into the freezer. So on cooking day, when I want to make this meal, I will take the contents of the bag with the meat and the veggies and pop that into the slow cooker. I will add the rice and the seasoning mixes from the boxes plus 1 1/4 cups of water, which is equivalent to 1 of those cans, 10 ounces of water. I will be ready to cook another meal just like the one I'm making tonight. Okay, it has been 3 hours, about 3.5 hours for me. This has cooked perfectly. This is one that you do not want to leave on. I'm actually gonna go ahead and turn the slow cooker off. You don't wanna leave it on cook or warm because the rice will get pretty mushy after this. So if anybody's eating later, they can just put some of it in a bowl and heat it up in the microwave. I don't want to keep it cooking. I found this recipe at Lazy Day Cooking Club. And since we're talking about freezer meal prep for crock pots, that's definitely something worth mentioning. My friend Carrie runs it with her sister. So if you are looking for more ideas like that, I'll leave a link to her website linked in the description box below. I mean, I forgot how tasty this one is. It's so good. I'm having mine right now because I'm about to head out the door in just a few minutes for choir rehearsal at the church. But for now, I'm going to enjoy this and then head out the door to do a little singing. Since we are prepping some things for the freezer, today's sponsor is perfect because it's Wild Grain. They ship artisan breads and pastries right to your doorstep frozen so that you can store them in your freezer, and they're made specifically to go from the freezer to the oven so you can have fresh baked delicious breads and pastries for your family. Wild Grain is the first of its kind, a subscription box featuring breads, pastries, and pastas that you can bake or cook straight from the freezer. And with their sourdough breads, Wild Grain uses a slow fermentation process that can be easier on your belly and richer in nutrients. But they offer so much more than just breads. They have cookies, they have biscuits, they have cheese breads, they have things that you can order in bulk, they have ciabatta rolls, they have so many different things. You got to go and check it out. One of the things I appreciate about Wild Grain is that you can build your own box. And since they are adding new seasonal items to their menu every month, you can try new things and maybe discover a new favorite in every box. Right now, new Wild Grain customers can get $30 off your first box plus a free item in every box for the life of your membership. Just go to wildgrain.com/Mindy30, or there's a link in the description box below, and you can use my code Mindy30 for that offer. When I signed up for a membership a couple months back, the free item that was in our box the first few times were croissants. And I'm telling you, these are the most delicious croissants I have ever eaten, including from bakeries. So again, to get that $30 off your first box as a new customer, just follow the link in the description box and use my code Mindy30, or go to wildgrain.com/Mindy30. And thank you again to Wild Grain for sponsoring today's freezer meal prep video. A couple months back, the kids and I were in Dollar Tree picking out some snacks for like a road trip or a movie night or something, and I came across these recipe magazines. They had several different kinds of magazines with different themes, and they were all very inexpensive. They were 5 quarters, $1.25. So I picked up several of them to thumb through. In this pasta meals magazine, there was a section that was all for crock-pot meals, and I saw this recipe for Hungarian goulash. So we're gonna actually make that tonight, and I'm also gonna prep one for the freezer as well because I think it will work fantastic as a freezer meal. I have some stew meat here. It's already cut up, so I don't have to do any prep work. I did a grocery pickup for this meal plan for this video, so they gave me a package that is only 2 pounds. I was really hoping I would get a package that's closer to 3, so I could have 1.5 pounds in each of the recipe, but that's okay. We're going to make it work. So I'm going to put half of this in the crock pot right now and set aside half of it for our freezer prep here in a little bit. In my 2-cup measuring cup here, I have half a cup of ketchup. I am adding to that 2 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce, half a teaspoon of garlic powder, half a teaspoon of ground mustard, 2 whole teaspoons of paprika, 1 tablespoon of brown sugar, salt to taste. I'm just going to add about half a teaspoon. I'm also going to do a few teaspoons of minced garlic and a couple teaspoons of beef broth base. Now I'm going to add 1 cup of water. Give this a good stir, and we're ready to move over to the crock pot and get this going with the other ingredients. I have my beef chunks in the slow cooker, and this is 1 onion that I sliced up. Instead of chopping it or dicing it like I normally do, these are just really thin little slices. So I'm going to go ahead and use half of that with what I'm making today, and the rest of it we'll set aside to do our freezer prep. And then in goes my sauce, and then low for 5 to 6 hours, high for 3 to 4 until the meat is done. For my freezer prep bag for this recipe, I added the rest of my sliced onion to the beef that I have in my Ziploc bag here, and I'm just going to make up another batch of the sauce that we are cooking everything in today. And once that's finished and all stirred up, I'll pour it into the bag and it will be ready to go into the freezer. And word to the wise, actual freezer bags with the double seal are so much better than these, but these are what I have, so I'm making them work. But you might want to use real Ziploc freezer bags instead of just the standard storage bags. My meat is done cooking, and the original recipe calls for using flour and water to thicken up the gravy in here, but I actually think cornstarch is a way better thickener. So I have about a 1/4 cup of cornstarch here with half a cup of cold water, stirring that all together to make a slurry. I'm pouring that in and stirring it into the meat and onion mixture. I'm gonna pop the lid back on and let that continue cooking. I'm gonna turn the heat up to high because it should take about 20 minutes or so for that to thicken. And we're gonna make up some noodles to go along with this in the meantime. I bought the name brand because I wanted 12 ounces of egg noodles. The store brand is cheaper. You get 16 ounces for even less than I paid for 12, but 12 ounces is the perfect amount. So I went ahead and just bought the amount that I wanted so that I could store an extra bag with the freezer meal and not have to like divide them between different packages and things like that. But feel free to use whatever egg noodles you want. But I'm going to make up 12 ounces for this recipe. Now I could add an additional 3.5 cups or so of beef broth to the recipe at the beginning of the cook cycle. And then later on, I could add the egg noodles to the crock pot and cook them right in the crock pot with everything else. But I decided just to cook the meat on its own and cook the egg noodles on the stove the old-fashioned way and stir it all together when we're ready to serve it. It is a cool, rainy, chilly day today in Tulsa, America. So I am getting some Cajun chicken chowder going in the slow cooker. Right now, I am making up the seasoning mixes. I thought about just using a standard Cajun seasoning. You absolutely could. I'd probably use about a tablespoon of that, but I decided I would make mine from scratch today. So I'm using a teaspoon each of garlic powder, onion powder, paprika, oregano, and salt. And then half a teaspoon of thyme and just a pinch, like a quarter teaspoon or less of cayenne and cracked black pepper. And I'm making up 2 separate ramekins of that seasoning because I'm gonna make one in the crock pot today, one batch in the crock pot, and I'm gonna put a batch in the freezer for later. I have my crock pot here and my freezer bag here, so we are going to prep what's going in the crock pot and in the freezer bag here together. First off, I have about 1 pound of chicken breast in each container. This is 1 package of smoked sausage. I went for the Cajun style, but really any kind of smoked sausage will do. So I'm gonna divide that between the crock pot and the freezer bag. This is 1 onion chopped up. I used my rotary grater here. So I'm gonna divide that between the 2 containers. So half an onion chop going in each recipe. I'm gonna use about a tablespoon of minced garlic. My seasoning mixes, 1 for the crock pot, 1 for the freezer bag. And I'm also gonna toss in just a teaspoon of chicken bouillon. This would be 1 cube of chicken bouillon. There's so much else that's flavoring this, especially with the sausage in it. I don't wanna use too much chicken broth because I'm afraid it would be too salty. I'm gonna toss in about 1 cup of frozen corn. This bag is 2 cups, so I'll just divide it in half between the crock pot and the freezer bag. 1 can of fire roasted tomatoes going in each thing here. And now the freezer bag is actually ready to pop into the freezer. So let me put my crock pot over in the heater, in the heating element, and I'll show you what else we're putting in this for today. To get this started today, and what I would need to add on cooking day is just 4 cups of water. Then I'll put the lid on this, high for 3 to 4 hours, low for probably 5 to 6 until the chicken is done and ready to take out and shred up. Once this is done cooking and the chicken is all shredded up and put back in the slow cooker, I'm going to add 1 cup of heavy whipping cream, about 3/4 of a cup of Parmesan cheese, and 1 cup of ditalini pasta. And then I will cook it on high until the pasta is done cooking and everything is heated through again. Okay, this turned out so fantastic. I've already tasted it. I went pretty light on the spiciness. My kids like spicy things okay, but not like overly spicy things, so I wanted to err on the side of caution there. My husband said that he would like it to be just a tad spicier, but he really liked it too. He said the flavor was really fantastic. I just have some bread to go along with it here so we can dip it in the broth, like soak up all that extra broth. Yum. I wanted to store the rest of the ingredients for the meal along with what I put in the freezer bag so that I wouldn't have to worry about tracking down anything. So I know this looks weird, but I actually put the pasta inside the Parmesan bag because this was 1.5 cups of Parmesan. I need 3/4 of a cup for the recipe. So I used half of it tonight and the other half I'll use when I make it again. But I add the pasta and the Parmesan at the same time to the recipe. So I just put 1 cup of the ditalini pasta in here with the Parmesan so I can put that in the freezer right with the freezer bag with the other ingredients. When I put all of the ingredients in the crock pot earlier today, I actually measured out 1 cup of heavy whipping cream and put it in the refrigerator because this is a pint of heavy whipping cream. So there's 2 cups in here. So the other cup, what was remaining after I measured out what I needed tonight, I actually just stuck this whole container in the freezer. I've never tried freezing heavy whipping cream. I usually don't try freezing dairy, but Supposedly it will work, especially if you put it in a container where it has room to expand. And since I used half of this container already, I'm actually just going to put this container with the rest of the ingredients for the freezer meal together, and we'll see. If I was gonna use it to make like whipping cream, like actual whipped cream, I don't think it would work very well. But since it's gonna be stirred into the soup when it's almost done cooking, I think it'll be fine. Even if when it thaws out, it's separated a little bit, I think it will be fine to go into the soup. So I'm gonna test this out. And when I make that freezer meal in a couple of months, we'll see whether or not the heavy whipping cream experiment works. Thank you so much again to Wild Grain for sponsoring today's video. They are linked in the description box below. Check out one of these videos to watch next, and I'll see you there.